Good evening. My name is Philip Smith. I know many of you from the community. I've lived here most of my life, but I won't bore you with the details or qualifications of why I'm here today. The main two things I want to talk about tonight are the attributes that I see missing in our community. Those two things are unity and vision. We need unity among our city government to determine and help lead this community on a clear path. And in order to develop that, we need a vision. We need a vision of where we want our city to go, both short-term and long-term. That vision will help our leadership determine the path when they make decisions. As you know, recently, several decisions have been immediately overturned by one council meeting to the next council meeting. This type of conduct needs to end. We need to restore the value of city government, and we need to do that through having a vision and having unity among city officials. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Willis, you have 1 minute to introduce yourself and talk about your candidacy.
Thank you. I think most of you know me. I've been the mayor before, and you know the way I think, and you know the way that I operate. The one thing that Weaver's mayor has to do is you can't stand back and dictate. You can't step on the council with a sledgehammer and tell them what they're going to do. The next 4 years for this council is going to be a marriage. And all of you know in your marriage, you don't always get along. But what you have to do is step back, take a deep breath, and come to a reasonable decision that best affects everyone. And that's the place we need to get. We need to bring Weaver's council, first and foremost, back together to where they can work together as a unit versus fighting with each other and bickering and being threatened and all of the negative things that have been in the newspaper over the last 4 years. Weaver is sick, but it's not terminal, and we can fix it, but we're going to have to work together to fix it. And first and foremost, it's unity. We all have to come together and work together to make it happen.
Thank you, Mr. Willis. Mayor Bearden, it is your turn to answer or to introduce yourself and talk about your candidacy.
Well, like Mr. Smith, I'm not going to bore you with the details of who my first grade teacher was and my sixth grade teacher or so forth. What I am going to say is accountability is one of the things that you need to be looking for in your city leaders. Accountability and responsibility. Accountability, you've got to remember there's 6 people up there. There's 5 councilors and there's 1 mayor. You don't have to be a mathematician to do the math on where the majority of the votes are at. If you've got 5 council and 1 mayor, you've got over 80% right here. 1 mayor alone is not going to tote the load while the whole works. It's going to take a cooperative unity together.
Thank you very much. The first question, we'll start with Mr. Willis if you want to come up to the microphone. Several people in the audience have asked, what are your plans to unify the mayor and the council so that Weaver is no longer a topic of conversation in the Anniston Star?
As I said earlier, this is going to be a marriage for the next 4 years. The council and mayor have got to work together. The mayor is going to be a used car salesman. He's going to be a finance director. He's going to be the public works director. He's going to have all the hats to wear. And I disagree with Mr. Bearden. The mayor is the big toe on the foot of Weaver. He sets the tone for the council meetings. And he's got to go to the council and express his ideas. But the idea is not always perfect. That's why the council is there. The mayor should bring an idea to the council, something he wants to fix or an improvement, and let the council work together to fine-tune that idea. I was mayor before, and admittedly, not all of my ideas were good. And when I went to the council and they said, you know, we may want to rethink this, you have to be open-minded enough to say, well, come up with another idea and let's look at that. So it's got to be a cooperative effort. Lawsuits and threats is not a way to run a city. The mayor is the ambassador of the city. And working together with the council and the surrounding communities and our state and local leaders, that's how you get things done. Weaver's a small town, and we didn't always have the tools or equipment or personnel to get things done. But I had the forethought to have a good relationship with the surrounding communities where they could help us. Lawsuits don't get things done. Working together, hat in hand, cooperation. That needs to be the tone for Weaver for the next 4 years.
Thank you. Mayor Bearden, the same question to you. How do you unify the city council and the mayor's office?
We have to find common grounds to work together. We have to have unity together. We have to have common vision. That's why I keep speaking accountability. Accountability to you as the constituents. Some of you I've seen in council meetings, but the majority of you I have not seen in council meetings. You need to hold your leaders, your representatives accountable. Nobody up here is going to tell you what you don't want to hear tonight. Everybody's going to tell you what you want to hear. Everybody wants your vote. Unfortunately, there's going to be disagreement. That's why there's 5 people, 6 people counting the mayor. Through the combination of those 6 people to arrive, there's going to be some differences, but to arrive without bickering and suing each other, I agree. Mr. Gene Robinson claims he's the most sued mayor in the county. I'm not sure about that. This council sued me 3 times. With that, accountability and responsibility, yes, it's got to stop. I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Smith, your response to the question about bringing unity to the city government here in Weaver.
One thing that Mr. Willis brought up that I think is a great point is the mayor sets the tone for the council. Mr. Bearden is correct. Mathematically speaking, the mayor only has 1 vote out of a total of 6 people. And mathematically, that's never going to win you anything. But what you need to understand as mayor in setting the tone of that, we provide leadership. The mayor of the city of Weaver provides leadership to the council and gives the council direction. Also provides input and as a daily ambassador to the citizens of Weaver and to the greater community. Having that influence and that relationship with the greater community is vital. We have to have relationships with the county government. The county government paves a lot of our roads. They're in charge of a lot of the projects that happen in Weaver. That type of thing is vital. The vision that I spoke of earlier is also vital. That should be developed within concert with the council as well as citizens. No person should be able to create a vision and drive it themselves, and that's the reason the government's designed the way it is. That vision should be developed, 5, 15, 20-year vision, and should be developed out with the council in mind, with the council present, and with the citizens present. Like the previous speaker said, I encourage everyone to come out to the council meetings. I'm there, and I would like to see you there as well to participate in the process so that we can, as a city and as a unified people, make decisions that dictate what happens in our city. Thank you.
And thank you. The next question, we'll start with Mayor Bearden, if you'd like to quit, step up to the podium. The question, which was asked earlier of the council candidates, what are your plans for getting more business and industry into Weaver in the next 4 years? How do you increase the business here?
Great question. I heard about buying your fuel in Weaver. How many of you buy your groceries in Weaver? Thank you. Weaver needs more businesses. There's no question about it. Weaver does not have a retail base to support itself financially. Weaver is a service-oriented city. To bring businesses to Weaver, we've got to clean up our act. One of the council candidates said that better than I could, I believe, in the fact of unity and how we represent ourselves and how we represent ourselves to the community. We are perceived differently than we see ourselves to be. And it doesn't matter how we see ourselves to be, it's how others see us to be. That's the perception and what we've got to change through our working together, our cooperative unity effort, and accountability and responsibility to you as the citizens.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, you're next to answer the question about how you bring more business into Weaver.
Bringing businesses into Weaver is one of the quickest ways for the city to raise tax revenue. There are other methods to do that, but that is a very quick scenario. Just to give you an example, where we're at, the council had an opportunity to bring in a business that would generate a sizable amount of revenue, and it took over a year for that council to realize that spending $1,200 or allocating $1,200 would bring them in $30,000 a year. As a small business owner, if you walked up to me and said, you can spend $1,200 today and get $30,000 a year in perpetuity, If I thought it wasn't a scam, I would shake your hand before you walked away. That's not good business. That cannot be allowed to continue. If we have the opportunity to get businesses into the city of Weaver, we need to be available to those businesses. And we need to be available to work the deal, so to speak, that is required to get it. One of the things Ms. Cole mentioned about the empty buildings downtown is something that's near and dear to me. Driving through our city and seeing the park unkept, seeing the trail unkept, and seeing the empty buildings and houses as I drive into Weaver is one of the biggest things that bothers me and one of the driving forces for my candidacy. There's absolutely no reason, in my opinion, that we cannot maintain our facilities. If we cannot maintain our facilities, there's an inherent problem in city government, and that's what we're here to solve tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Willis, your views on how to bring more business into the city of Weaver.
One of the council members earlier, candidates earlier, mentioned that the way you get business in Weaver is you go out and ask them. Well, that's correct to a point. You don't call Sam Walton and say, hey, come to Weaver, and he opens up a Walmart tomorrow. It's not that easy. What you have to do is work with Chamber of Commerce and come up with a proposal that shows Weaver's demographics, show the businesses that are available, show the properties that are available, and sell that property to a prospective business owner. Through the course of my campaigning, and I just stumbled onto this by accident, I've been in contact with 3 different developers who have an interest in moving to Weaver. And 2 of them are large businesses that will bring a big revenue boost into our community. And if I am elected, both of those groups are willing to start negotiations immediately to come to Weaver. The third is a business expansion, which would be a pharmacy in Weaver. Now, we're not going to get a Rite Aid, I can tell you that right up front. It's not going to happen, but we might be able to pull off a smaller annex that might open 3 or 4 days a week. And some of our elderly citizens that can't leave Weaver now, especially now that the bus system's been done away with, they would have something local that they could go to a pharmacy and not have to go all the way into Anniston. And that serves 2 purposes. Again, it's revenue for Weaver, and it's also business growth. And it makes it easier for the residents. So business will come to Weaver, but the mayor has to go out and work the trenches to make it happen. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to come up with a professional proposal to make it work and show a prospective business owner why it's to their benefit to come to Weaver. You can't just say, come on to Weaver, and they come in truckloads. It doesn't work that easy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Willis. Mr. Smith, you'll get this next question first, so if you'll walk up to the podium while I'm asking it. Probably the biggest number of questions I've received tonight have been about the roads in Weaver. So I would like you to address the issue of repaving, repairing. How do you make the roads here in Weaver better for the people who drive on them?
Absolutely. Coming into Weaver, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the first thing you do is come down Anniston Street. The majority of the people coming into Weaver. And the first thing you'll notice is our brand new, nicely paved road that we're very proud of. However, the striping on that road is now over 8 months overdue. I doubt very many citizens are aware that that project is a grand total of less than $6,000, but yet it remains undone 8 months later. How many lives have been endangered from not driving on that road? This council has failed to act, and we have not had that road paved again for over 8 months. In order for this road projects to be handled, the system needs to be developed in order to prioritize the projects. Mr. Miles mentioned grants. One of the first things that's going to be needed in that grant process is we're going to need to be able to say we have 4 roads in severe condition that are hazardous to people. We have 2 roads or 20 roads that are in need of repair. We have 35 roads that are in good or acceptable condition with 3 to 5 years life remaining. These are the type of things that grant applications are going to be requiring. We have no such system in Weaver. If you ask Pinecrest Drive, the street that I live on, I doubt anybody could even tell you the last time it was paved, let alone the condition on a fair rating scale. That's the first step. Cooperation with other city governments and county governments, again, as I mentioned earlier, is essential. The county is responsible for some of the road paving in our city, and as well as the state. And those relationships will be pivotal. The projects will not continue without those relationships, and they must be built upon, expanded upon, and made sure that they're in good condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Willis, your turn to answer the question about the roads of Weaver.
Roads of Weaver. Wow. Jacksonville Street, let's talk about that first. Federal money comes through the MPO, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization. When you call the federal government, they don't just show up with a bag full of money and hand it to you and say, go fix your roads. You have to work with the surrounding communities. The money comes into MPO and they distribute it to the projects using professionals who can design a plan and infrastructure and estimates to get the project done. When I was the mayor, we had a very active role in MPO, and the project for Jacksonville Street was set to be let in 2009. It was ready to go, and this was a good project. This was a total reconstruction, and our part would have been $400,000. That's a lot of bang for the buck. But that project was scrapped, and Jacksonville Street sits just like it has for the last 30 years, falling apart. I can tell you that to come into Jacksonville Street and just put a resurface on it is like putting vinyl siding on a rotten barn. Jacksonville Street has got to be reconstructed to be fixed. The water lines run under the road. If you don't move those water lines, every time there's a water leak, you're going to dig the road up again. You're throwing money away if you don't do it right. It needs to have curbing and gutters. It needs to have more of a shoulder. Jacksonville Street is a fatality waiting to happen, and we have been very lucky that it hasn't happened yet. So to fix Jacksonville Street and come in and just resurface is not going to help the problem. You're still going to have a narrow road with no shoulders, poor drainage, and utilities under it. Jacksonville Street has to be reconstructed, and the way to get that money is through an MPO. My last year as mayor, that project had been there since 1993, and it was because there were some problems with the project. I had all of the mayors that were on MPO in agreement to forego all the projects in their cities so we could do Jacksonville Street and get it fixed. That project's been scrapped. I've been told that it's still on the books. I don't know. I haven't had a hand in the mix. But I can tell you that the MPO money is there, and I will aggressively pursue it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Willis. Mayor Bearden, what can be done to improve and repair the roads in Weaver?
Let's talk about some accurate numbers. In December of 2008, the Jacksonville Road project was $12.2 million. Weaver's share was $4.2 million. These are accurate numbers that are verifiable with all public information, opposed to what my opponent just said. Jacksonville Street does need repairing. Nobody's been opposed to repairing Jacksonville Street. You heard the council candidates talk about the financial aspect. The financial aspect is critical to accomplishing it. When this project first started, it started at less than $100,000 in 1993. It started at $98,000. We've just accomplished phase 1, Anniston Street, at less than the original amount. Granted, paving is 8 months, the striping is 8 months past due, and it needs to be striped. It's dangerous. The council needs to get active and get that road striped. I will participate with it on that with them. Jacksonville Street is phase 2. We need to assess Jacksonville Street. It has a traffic count of 1,660 cars per day. It doesn't qualify for federal monies. I'm sorry. I could tell you more. I know he's going to pick up this sign in just a minute. Everybody wants to pave streets. We've got a lot of streets in Weaver that need paving. We need to sit down as a council and mayor and develop a plan and set down what is our priorities. How are we going to accomplish our priorities? What is your priority? Let's work together, and how are we going to accomplish this financially? And put together a plan of action and take action on it to make it happen, not that it's been on the books for 22 years. Thank you.
And thank you. We're going to begin our next question with Mr. Willis, so you may come ahead to the podium here. The second most asked question tonight, cleaning up the city of Weaver. Are there any plans to clean it up, to hold homeowners responsible for keeping their properties clean, the vacant houses that are a problem, and also the sign, of the welcome sign as you come in from Lindlock? The area is grown up and needs to be cleaned up. So what do you do about making the community cleaner?
That's a good question. when I was, again, I hate to keep saying this, but when I was mayor, I was the one that put up that sign. I went to Orby Brewer and I asked him permission, could we put a sign up on his property? The reason it's on private property is because to put it on that narrow right-of-way would have been dangerous to put a brick wall right on the edge of the road. So we built it in-house. We have less than $150 in that welcome sign. I designed it on a Word program in my computer in City Hall. That's the same vinyl sign that was there 8 years ago. It doesn't take a lot to take the 4 screws out and replace the sign. But the mayor has to do that. He can't depend on the city employees to see things that need to be done. The mayor has to listen to the community, take that input, and then run with it and make things better for our city. When I was mayor, we had a planning commission that was intended to deal with high grass and violations of zoning. And it was a way that if there was zoning that was too intrusive, the citizen could come and plead their case to that committee, and they would make a recommendation to the council. That committee has since been disbanded and is no longer in place. Planning commission is what it takes to set the zoning and enforce that zoning. I hired Mike Howard, who is a fantastic employee. Mike is a professional, he's a contractor, he knows how to get things done. Mike has been so sidetracked doing other projects that are way outside of his responsibility, and he hasn't had the opportunity to get out and enforce the zoning. All of that has to be done from the mayor's office. The mayor has to be in charge. And that's my premise for this entire campaign is I will be retired by the time this election takes place. And Weaver will get a full-time mayor. And that's something that Weaver has to have. You've got to have somebody that's full-time that can manage the departments, manage the complaints, and address the situations, form a plan to fix those situations, and bring it to the council if need be. That's the mayor's job, working together.
Thank you. Mr. Bearden, your response to how we clean up the city of Weaver.
To clean up the city of Weaver, we need to assess what are we talking about to clean up. Are we talking about these 2 old houses? Are we talking about the grass? Are we talking about the codes? Are we talking about something financial? Are we talking about all of it? Are we talking about the code enforcement officer? What are we talking about? That's why this council, this new council, must sit down. Their first priority must be to sit down and say, what are the objectives? Is it cleaning up Weaver? Is that number 1? Is that number 2? Wherever it falls in the priority. Where does it fall in conjunction with the citizens' request? When we sit down as a group and say, here are our priorities for our administration term. Here's what we're going to accomplish. Here's what we're going to be responsible to you as citizens. When you asked us to clean up something, how are we going to get that cleaned up, and what's the timetable, and how are we going to make that happen? Right now, contrary to what my opponent says, we are responding to these code due to complaint. That's what we've been doing in years past, and that's what we continue to do. When you complain, then there's a code, citation, warning, and then there's a citation issue. Some issued even this week. We don't need to be doing that. We need to be aggressive. We need a plan of action. We need a council that will sit down, cooperate together, and say, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to selectively enforce codes to Tom, Dick, or Harry. But we're going to enforce it equally, unilaterally to all. And if we have codes. We went through a codification since 1945 during my administration. It was started in the previous administration, but we did finish it up. Our codes are good. We just need to enforce those codes. We don't need to respond to complaint only. We need to respond to your request as the citizens.
Thank you, Mayor Bearden. Mr. Smith, your response to the question about cleaning up the city of Weaver.
One thing that I agree with Mr. Bearden on, Mayor Bearden, emphatically is that one of the first things the new council needs to do is sit down and determine the objectives for the next 4 years. That goes back to the vision statement that I made earlier in my opening address. I doubt many citizens are aware, but it's a running joke at city council meetings that any time a new project comes up, they assign it to Mike Howard. And it's no wonder that with that workload that we do have the properties that we have in the city in the condition that they're in. Nothing, I agree with Ms. Cole, and nothing makes a neighborhood look worse than driving down the street and seeing a unkept property, seeing a yard full of trash or a yard full of different things. I also agree with Mr. Miles that enforcing that via a fine should be the last step. There should be enough pride in the community, and that's something we need to establish, is that pride in the community again. That should be the first step. The second step, if needed, should be a written warning from the city, and then move on to fines and things of that nature. But I do believe that we need to enforce the ordinances, and if necessary, via fines. The other thing that I'd like to talk about is the trail. Cleaning up the trail is a big priority of mine, as I mentioned earlier. I do believe it's absolutely unacceptable to see the trail uncut. When Anniston cuts their grass and we have 2-foot-high weeds as soon as you enter Weaver, that does not give a good sign for people entering Weaver, either as residents, visitors, or potential business owners. Another thing on the same topic is trail lighting. I believe that the trail is long past overdue of having some lighting. In the winter months, the usable life of the trail is down to, most of us are barely getting off work when the trail is not usable anymore. And listening to the community, as they said before, that is vital, and that's where some of these ideas came from. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Smith. Mayor Bearden, you'll get the first shot at this next question, so if you're coming up to the podium, please. We have several questioners who want to know, what are your plans to help the schools here in Weaver? Specifically, how to ensure community involvement in the high school and the other schools here in Weaver.
The schools here in Weaver, as you well know, are county schools. They're not city schools. Our involvement with the schools is limited to a great degree. However, a cooperative spirit, a cooperative effort, and availability to be there, to assist, to do whatever we can do to work with the schools is in need. Again, being county schools, our hands are somewhat tied, but just the availability that we can offer those hands for whatever that they could be used for.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Smith, your answer to how the city can help the schools here in Weaver.
As a school board employee, I'm aware of the things that a school can and do receive from municipalities across the state. Oxford's a glaring example of that. The city provides almost everything for that city. Of course, Weaver's nowhere in the condition to provide that type of support to our schools, and as Mr. Bearden said, they are county schools. However, most citizens may find it surprising to learn that the city of Weaver provides absolutely no funding to the school. There is no funding. In fact, as recently as a few years ago, the city has stopped maintaining the grounds for the schools. So we have removed all support from our schools. That's reprehensible. As the only one of 2 county schools that's in a municipality, and Ohatchee being the other, it's absolutely egregious that the city of Weaver does not provide any support for our schools. Even if we're not able to provide monetary support, there are certainly things we can do to reach out and create that pride that I mentioned earlier in our community. That's one thing that I think needs to be done. Mr. Bearden's 100% correct. A cooperative spirit is essential. We must feel like Mr. Allison, the new principal here at Weaver High School, I know him well, he's a great guy. He needs to feel like he can reach out to the mayor's office and say, these are the things I need. What of this can you provide? Same thing with Ms. Brown at the elementary school. This is what I need. What of this can you provide? That type of spirit will get us our schools, which are already great, next step. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Mr. Willis. How does the city of Weaver help the school here?
I disagree with Mr. Bearden that it's a county school and our hands are tied. Their paychecks may come through the county, but it's right in the middle of our city limits. There is absolutely no reason we cannot have an involvement in a school. We have county school resource officers. We have Weaver officers that volunteer their time to go to the school and participate with the kids. We can pay their salary to give them some overtime available to let them go so they're not losing money or taking time away from their families. We can provide salary to that officer to go and work with the school resource officer. We can go into the schools and have programs with the police department about the stranger danger and public safety. And in the high school level, you can teach them maybe lifting fingerprints and how to understand identity theft. There's a lot of things that we can do to interact with the kids. In 2008, Becky Huff came to me and suggested bring back the homecoming parade. And I thought that was a fantastic idea. After 20 years, we brought back the homecoming parade, and we did a bonfire, and the kids came to the park, and I bet we had 1,000 people in the park the night we did that. And it still goes on to this day. That's the kind of programs you need. You come up with the idea, and then you run with it. You can't do business the way it's always been done. You have to think outside of the box and come up with new ideas, innovation. We can have involvement with the kids. We can support youth athletics at every level. I always donated tax dollars to the boosters because that's a program that supports the kids. Youth athletics is what brings kids away from the television, away from the video games, and off the streets, and teaches them discipline and physical fitness. That's the kind of programs we need. I brought in the skateboard park. I brought in the BMX. All of that, if you go by there and you see it, there's kids out there playing. That's kids that aren't involved in gangs. They're not involved in drugs. They're out there playing and doing things outside. That's the way you get kids involved with the community.
Thank you, Mr. Willis. This will be our final question of the mayoral candidates. Mr. Smith, you'll get to go first on this one. A couple of people asked about how you plan to protect the citizens of Weaver. Specifically, what are your plans for the police department? Will you keep its current level, reduce, increase? What are your plans?
The police department in Weaver is probably the best department we've had in a number of years. In my memory, as a matter of fact. There are a couple changes that I would like to see made, and I'm sure that there's several in the back that are particularly interested in this. Among those, I see Weaver Police on Highway 21 too much. I've had several citizens mention that to me, and I'm not sure what the logic is behind that, but I'd like to see more community policing. I'd like to see the patrols in our neighborhoods. I'd like to see the police in the town, and I think there's no reason why we can't do that. We should have regular patrols in every neighborhood. If you go a couple of weeks without, you shouldn't be able to go a couple of weeks without seeing a Weaver patrol car go down your road. That provides a sense of security to every resident. Apart from that, other thing that I would like to see and is in my plan for the city of Weaver is regular patrols of the walking trail. We've been very fortunate up until this point to have virtually no incidents on the walking trail. That is a matter of time. Having a presence on the police can forestall an issue there and keep that track as a safe place and a safe exercise and something for the entire community to enjoy in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Mr. Willis. The same question goes to you about the Weaver City Police Department.
I have the utmost respect for the Weaver Police Department. 27 years ago, I started my career in law enforcement with Chief Morrow. With a pawn shop gun and a borrowed flashlight, I was out in the streets of Weaver patrolling. So I understand the difficulty of being a small town police officer. You're underfunded. Most of the time you don't have backup. You're out there on your own, and I can tell you it is a difficult job. Is the Weaver Police Department perfect? Absolutely not. I don't think you'll find any police department that's perfect. But I will say that I have the utmost respect for Chief Bush. I think he has done a fantastic job with the Weaver Police Department. He's turned it around. We all know Weaver had a reputation years and years ago. We were a speed trap. People didn't come to Weaver, it's a speed trap. You had officers writing 90 tickets a month. That's crazy. Chief Bush turned that around. He has a professional organization. They're respected. He has fantastic officers, and I can't say anything bad about them. With regard to Highway 21, yes, I see them out on Highway 21 making a lot of traffic stops. But how many DUIs have been stopped? How many lives have been saved by drunks taken off the road? So I agree that we definitely need to work on some programs, getting in the neighborhoods more, maybe do some community education programs at City Hall involving the police. But as far as the police department and the way it's operating, if it's not broken, you don't fix it. I think Chief Bush does a very good job. Now, there's people out there I'm sure will disagree. I'm sure someone's had a ticket or someone's had something they're not happy with. But unfortunately, that's the nature of law enforcement. That's what we do. We tend to make people mad on occasion. But I think they do a very good job. While I was mayor, we did increase the police department by 2 officers, which helped. I don't know what their staffing is now, but I think anything we can do to help Weaver Police Department, we need to do. There's been some discussion about that I was going to cut the police department or I was going to pull them back into the city limits. I have no plans to do that unless finance is mandated. You know, the solvency of Weaver is our most important issue right now. But if we can afford it, I think we leave the police department as is. They're doing a fine job.
Thank you very much. Mayor Bearden, you get the final word on what you would do for the next 4 years with the Weaver Police Department.
Chief Bush is second to none. His officers are second to none. We have the best kept secret in Alabama, not just Calhoun County. Our police department doesn't back up to anyone. With the cooperative help of our police department, including all the officers, we put a drug eradication program into effect. If you recall the 9-year-old that drank the meth. If you've kept up with our stats, on one particular week, you would have seen 17 meth busts. That information is published on our website. You can go on it monthly and you can see that. You can see the effect that it's had. Going back out into the police jurisdiction has given us a buffer zone of protection. It has given us protection for the citizens outside the city proper. Just a few weeks ago, our police department effected an arrest on something in the Plainview area for cars being broken into. They did this in short order within the same week that it happened. That same week, out on Highway 21, by the way, which has did used to have a fatality rate of over 6 per year. Compare that now. Go on the stats and look and see what it is now. It's almost 0. And by the way, we do get overtime grants for being out on 21 as well to support all the other traffic in the city. But we also, I say we, I include myself with them because I like to think I work with them. I know they work with me, but there was a arrest made for theft of electronic devices over at the Department of Domestic Preparedness. Maybe many of you seen that. The same week, we had the hardware stores broken into. My store was attempted. A vacated building was broken into. The Barricade Express was broken into and vandalized, and they're saying stop. We've got a great police department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bearden.
Thank you for coming.